Superman the movie from 1978 is a film that transcends time, a film that defined one of the most iconic characters ever created, and the film that made you believe that a man could fly. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of what is arguably the most important superhero movie of all time. I'm Brennan for the New Wave Nerds. Subscribe down below for more nerd content and commentary, because all of this and more I bequeath to you, my son. Superman the movie, an alien orphan is sent from his dying planet Krypton to Earth, where he grows up to become his adoptive planet's first and greatest superhero. That's my impression of Marlon Brando from Superman the movie. I hope you all enjoyed that. It is directed by Richard Donner, written by Mario Puzo, among others, and stars Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, and Gene Hackman. Now, as always, we're going to begin with a brief non-spoiler review. This movie is amazing. If you call yourself a superhero fan, if you call yourself a comic book fan, and you haven't seen this movie, then you're lying. You can't be a fan. This is the origin of so many of the movies that we view as fans of superheroes today. This is the granddaddy of them all. It was amazing at the time, and it still stands up to this day. Now, granted, there are parts of it that do feel dated. It is certainly a movie from the 70s. Some of the effects are a little bit iffy. Some of the storytelling is very old school, very silver agey, but that is part of its charm. By and large, the movie stands up to this day and is an incredible introduction to, again, one of the most iconic fictional characters ever created. I think it's absolutely amazing, and if you haven't seen it, then you haven't lived. Like I said, there are some glaring problems with it, but by and large, this movie is as amazing as it was the very first time I ever saw it. Now, before we get into the spoiler section, I'm going to very politely ask you all to head on over to patreon.com/newwavenerds. We are doing a Patreon drive where we are trying to get to either 15 new patrons or $50 a month, which just about covers our podcast hosting fees. And when that happens, we're going to be releasing a very special 12-part video series where we examine the classic DC Comics series Crisis on Infinite Earths. We're going to go through it issue by issue, breaking down the story and reviewing the comic as we go along. So it's going to be the perfect place if you are interested in DC Comics but don't really have the time to read a massive series from 1980 because it is very, very wordy, but worth it if you got the time. But if you don't, then that's what we are here for. So if you like the work that we do and want to help us make these videos look even better, we're right there with you. Please head on over to patreon.com/newwavenerds. Now, let's get into the spoiler section. So right at the beginning here, I do just want to make clear my own biases, of which there are many, right? I mean, it's impossible for me to be objective about this movie. Superman is one of my favorite superheroes of all time. He has a very, very special place in my heart. I don't know if I would say right now that he's my top, but he has, ever since I read All-Star Superman way back in the day, he has always been in my top 5, if not my top 3. He's absolutely amazing, and so I love the character, and I'm going to love pretty much anything in which we see him. Now, as it pertains to this movie in particular, of course I'm biased because of the fact that it's Superman, but this movie also holds a really special place in my heart. I don't even remember the first time that I saw it, because it was so long ago. I've seen it so many times since then. I think I might have been like 13 or so, because I have a very specific memory of the first time that I watched it being in the living room at the house that my dad lived in when I was in middle and high school. I've seen it an upteen amount of times. It gets better every time. Even the dated aspects just make me love it even more. And let me tell you this, it has one of the best movie soundtracks of all time. It's absolutely amazing. And here's a little hack, here's a little secret, some insight into my life. if you want to make me smile, just play the Superman theme from this. Just play it. No matter where we're at, no matter what's going on, what's happening in my life, that song always makes me smile. It fills me with so much joy because of the memories that I hold with this character and with this movie. It is amazing. And the crazy part about that is I was excited to watch this movie again. I haven't seen it for... Actually, I think it's probably only been like 6 months since I watched it last. So there was really no reason for me to be this excited. But I was incredibly excited. The minute that the credits open, I have this big grin on my face. And I didn't even notice it until we got to the end of the credits. And I was like, oh, why does my mouth hurt? Oh, because I've been smiling for 2.5 minutes straight. Because it's a 70s movie. And so the opening credits are so long. But it's just amazing. It's beautiful. It's so uplifting and hopeful. And I'm so glad that they have taken and made a new arrangement of that and released it with the teaser trailer for the upcoming Superman. That fills me up with so much hope. I'm so excited. I love Superman. I love this movie. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into it itself. So, as I mentioned in the intro, this movie is very Silver Agey. I mean, this is the classic Boy Scout Superman. You know, the big Boy Scout in blue. When people say that, they are thinking of this movie and they are thinking of the Silver Age comic books. He is such a good person. He is literally the best among us. That is his purpose, right? That's why he's here. He is the absolute best of humanity. This is literally Silver Age. I mean, there's a scene in this movie where we see Superman save a cat out of a tree. When he flies away from people, he waves and says bye. He's so polite. He's just, a regular, the ideal image of like a Midwest guy. And that's a testament, in the comics, and you see it a little bit in this, but it's a testament to the upbringing that he was raised with which he was raised. Ma and Pa Kent, Martha and Jonathan, are so integral to that development, and we see some of that here, but not really enough. It's already a 2.5 hour long movie, and so you can't necessarily add more without probably cutting some other stuff. But the extent of their relationship with Clark in this is just that they love him unconditionally. And that's the point. Again, that's why Superman is such a good person. It's not because he has these amazing powers. It's because he has these amazing powers and was brought up by just some regular farmers. Just Ma and Pa Kent down in Smallville, Kansas. And that's one of the reasons that we're so interested in stories like, I think it's Mark Miller's Superman Red Sun, where he still lands on Earth, but he lands in like the Soviet Union. It's such an interesting look at the character. I love that their relationship here. And one of my favorite aspects about this movie that we see play throughout this is that he goes through like some of the classic, how would you describe this? Like sayings of Superman. He moves mountains. At the end of the movie, he is literally pushing mountains to stop, to save people, to, whatever. He's reshaping rivers. He's pushing the mountains to reshape the rivers. We don't technically see him leap tall buildings in a single mound, but in the opening of this movie, we see him move faster than a locomotive. This movie does such a good job of distilling those aspects of Superman into an easily digestible 2.5 hour movie where you really come to love the character. You really come to love him. And even though he has all of these powers, he still just feels like a guy. He still just feels like a regular guy. And I think that it's a testament to the incredible storytelling and to the performance of Christopher Reeve himself. We would not be able to talk about this movie. This movie would not be as amazing if it weren't for Christopher Reeve. He is Superman. He was Superman. May he rest in peace. He was Superman to everybody for years. For years. He embodied that role so much. But the best part about Christopher Reeve's Superman is partially not even his job as Superman. It's his role as Clark Kent. You know, this is the only live action Superman, and in some cases the only animated Superman, where I really feel like you can understand how people wouldn't put two and two together that Clark is Superman. You know, and Christopher Reeve, he's a classic, I believe, Juilliard-trained actor, and so he obviously is incredibly talented. He has got the training. I was trying to find it here. Yeah, no, here we go. Study at New York's famous Juilliard School. I thought so. I was fairly certain of that. But you can really see that throughout this movie. The acting is incredible. Whether he is Superman or Clark Kent, he so easily moves between the two. He can be clumsy and the quote-unquote oafy, Clark Kent, and then he can be the strong and confident Superman and switch between them like that. The physical comedy in this movie from him as Clark Kent is great. It's great. He really plays it up. It's amazing. There's one in particular scene that anytime I think about Christopher Reeve as Superman instantly comes to my mind. And that is, it's just after Superman has his interview with Lois Lane, where he takes her and flies her around the city. Superman leaves, and then Clark Kent knocks on the door and is like, Lois, you remember we have a date. And she's all flustered because of, the fact that she's just been taken flying by this Adonis of a man, Superman. And she goes to fix off her stuff. And Clark, when Christopher Reeve is Clark, he's got the slouched posture. He is shy and timid, and he raises up his voice a couple steps, and he's obviously got the glasses on. When Lois leaves to go make herself ready for this date, Christopher Reeve, he takes off the glasses, and when he does, he straightens up his posture, he lowers his voice, and he becomes Superman. And it's just a little moment there. It's a scene that lasts maybe 5-10 seconds. But he takes it off. He says in his Superman voice, "Lois, I have something to tell you." And then she comes back, and he gets nervous. And so he brings his posture back down, puts the glasses on, raises his voice again, and returns to Clark Kent. And he says, I was really nervous about this date. But I said, but he goes, but golly, I thought I'd just show you the best time, or something like that. And it's so amazing. It's tremendous acting. And there are, again, I mentioned the physical comedy a minute ago. There are multiple moments throughout this where Superman, or where while he is posing as Clark, he does something Superman-esque, and then people make fun of him for being oafy and clumsy, and he just basically looks at the camera and gives a little sly smile. It's just a knowing little thing where it's like, oh, if only they knew. And the moment that springs to me right now of that is relatively early on. Clark and Lois leave the Daily Planet building, and they are accosted by an attempted mugger who stops them, pulls them into the alley, and eventually he has a gun pointed at them, and eventually he shoots it, and Clark quickly, brings his hand over and catches the bullet in midair, and he falls over, and Lois is like, "Oh man, are you okay?" And he goes, "Oh, sorry, I fainted." And she's like, "You fainted, really?" And she gets up and leaves, and Clark just opens his palm, looks at the bullet, smiles, and throws it aside. It's so amazing. And again, this is the only performance really in live action. I think Tim Daly did it pretty good in the animated series, but in live action, this is the only situation where I have understood how nobody would get it. This is the only movie that really nails the dichotomy of Superman and Clark Kent. In the same way that most comics don't really showcase it except for, say, All-Star Superman. I think it's tremendous, and it's such an important aspect of the character here. So again, Christopher Reeve, he was Superman. He was the Superman. And speaking of him, there's a great documentary about him on HBO Max, which I believe is, it's Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story. tremendous. So fun. I mean, it's incredibly sad, so I shouldn't say fun. But it's a really, really well-produced documentary, and it's a really interesting insight into the character. But enough on Christopher Reeve. Let's talk about some of the other cast members. I'm going to want to talk about another person who is dead, unfortunately. Sorry, that was a really blunt way to say that. Oh, no. Oh, man, I just realized all three of the main cast are dead. Oh, that's really... I didn't realize Margot Kidder died, too. Oh, no. Wow. That's very sad. In any case, Gene Hackman. Wow, I threw myself for a loop there. But again, let's talk about Gene Hackman. Again, may he rest in peace. He plays Lex Luthor in this. And while this isn't my favorite performance of Lex Luthor, or this isn't my favorite adaptation, this is obviously, again, Silver Age Lex Luthor in the same way that we have Silver Age Superman. In this, Lex Luthor isn't a businessman per se, though his, plot in this is to buy up some real estate and, destroy California or whatever. But he's more just a regular mad scientist. How does he describe himself? Like the world's top criminal mastermind or something like this. He's just a crazy guy. I mean, he's incredibly intelligent, but he's just crazy. He's not a businessman. He's just a mad scientist. And it's very comedic. And most of it is playing off of his lackey, Otis, who's played by Ned Beatty. But it is very jokey. And as longtime listeners will know, I'm a huge fan of Lex Luthor. He's one of my favorite villains of all time. The rivalry between him and Superman is, when it's good, it is so good. And I don't like this performance. I don't like this adaptation of Lex Luthor. But Gene Hackman is so great in it anyways. He really shows out here. And for me, maybe this is just my ignorance. But everything of Gene Hackman's that I have seen has not been like comedic. It's been very serious. We've got, Unforgiven and the French Connection. Oh man, if I didn't remember that, I was going to be really, really embarrassed. And those are not comedic movies. He's very serious. He's a gritted teeth kind of guy. And I love Gene Hackman in those. He's so tremendous, such a great actor. I had never seen him in a comedic role. And again, I think he really performed well, even though I don't like his interpretation of the character. But that being said, even though 99% of his scenes are comedic, there are a few moments in here where he is actually like really menacing. Where he's not like joking. They're not playing any jokes off of him or off Otis. It's just Superman being evil. Or excuse me, just Lex Luthor being evil. Whoops. And the first one that I can think of is when it's after Luthor has like hijacked the nuclear missiles, and he uses this super high-pitched frequency that only dogs and Superman can hear. His monologue in that is super, super sinister, where he's telling Superman about how he's put a poison pellet in an air vent. It's really, really good. He's trying to get Superman to come to him so that he can use the kryptonite, which he has just received, on him. The performance there is great. And then later, just a few minutes later, when Superman actually goes to Lex's hideout, and Lex, I think it's specifically the scene where Superman opens the lead-lined box and it reveals the kryptonite. His dialogue there is so, so good. And again, I think it's tremendous how even in a role which is almost entirely comedic, Gene Hackman can still sort of get at the more sinister and evil nature of this iconic villain. I think it's really, really interesting. It's really impressive. And he's one of the greatest actors that we've had. He's certainly among the greats. I don't know where I would put him. That would actually be an interesting discussion. I don't know. I mean, on my personal list, this is a really unrelated aside. On my personal list, I wouldn't put him above Humphrey Bogart, but that's just because I love Bogart so much. In any case, we got one last cast member to talk about, and that is the one who I just learned earlier passed in 2018. May she rest in peace. And that is Margot Kidder, Lois Lane. She's great. She's good. I mean, it's a very different kind of Lois Lane than we see in the modern day, starting in like the 80s with John Byrne in The Man of Steel. And it's not Golden Age comics Lois either. Again, this is Silver Age Lois. In the Golden Age, Lois is so rude to Clark. Like, she hates Clark. She hates him with like a burning passion. She loves Superman, but she hates Clark. In the Silver Age, they sort of become a little bit friendlier, and there's still obviously, you know, a little bit of a rivalry there, which we don't hit on in this movie because we frankly just don't have enough time at the Daily Planet. But I think Lois in this is really good, even including the fact that in many ways she's just like the damsel of the story. Lois is not as integral in this movie as I think she is to the character writ large. In other visual media, in comics in particular, I think Lois is much more important than she is here. But you cannot talk about this movie without talking about Margot Kidder, because this movie doesn't work if the chemistry between her and Superman doesn't work. If there's no chemistry between Superman and Lois, then the Superman fails. And I think they hit it out of the park here. They hit it out of the park. I mean, you understand how and why these two have such love for each other. You know, and you see the beginnings of it here, and eventually in the future it'll burgeon and turn into, you know, more and more. And eventually Superman's even going to give up his powers to be with her. Spoiler alert for a movie that's like 40 years old. That won't even come out for another like 2 years or something after this movie. But in any case, again, even though Margot Kidder doesn't necessarily play as big a role in this movie as I would have liked her, she's integral to the success of this film. This is a movie where if any one of the major actors or major story beats or major effects or whatever didn't play out or didn't work out, the movie fails. And we're not talking about it today. You know, if Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, or Gene Hackman, if any of them is not on the top of their game, we're not talking about it almost 50 years later. Wow, can you believe that? In 3 years, it'll be the 50th anniversary of this movie. That's pretty insane. And when it happens, we're going to throw a massive Superman-themed cocktail party. You believe you me. But in any case, I think it's great. And I love that... you know, even though we don't necessarily get to see all that much time with them together, there's such a bond there that at the end, Superman, in a move that, you know, is very Silver Agey and is really dumb, if I'm being honest here, it's really dumb. Superman loves her so much that when she dies, he flies around the world so fast that it spins back the clock so that he can save her, against the direct wishes of his, you know, birth father, Jor-El, who tells him not to interfere in like human affairs or whatever. He just completely disregards that because Lois is that important to him. And I think that's really, really interesting. And, you know, I love the fact that we get that scene. Again, I hate the fact that he flies around the world so fast to turn back time. It's just a dumb idea. I don't know whose story beat that was, who thought of it or what. But it's stupid. And I can't imagine that it would have been that great in 1978 either, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think this is just like a modern, like hindsight thing. I think back then it probably wasn't great. But even looking past that, from the mere fact that Superman does that because of Lois's death, I think is so powerful to me, because we begin the story with the death of Jonathan Kent. We begin the story with Superman's dad dying of a heart attack and him running forward and holding him in his arms. Or maybe this is at the funeral, I don't know. In any case, he's mourning the loss of his father, and he says, even with all these powers, I couldn't save him. And Superman is not going to let that happen again. And that's why it's so powerful. And that's why I think, even though in execution it's lame, thematically, it is such a good plot point for Christopher Reeve Superman. It's so amazing. I can't talk enough about this movie. I've been waiting to talk about this for we've been doing the podcast for almost 3 years. I've been waiting to talk about this for 2.5. Basically since the beginning. I was I'm talking about Superman 78 someday. I do want to mention, again, this is a movie from the 70s. I mentioned earlier on that in lots of ways it does feel dated. In lots of ways it feels like a 70s movie, especially when you look at some of the effects. But I'm going to be honest here, and I tried to look at this at this aspect in particular as unbiased as possible. I really think a lot of the flight holds up. I really think it does. There are obviously scenes where it looks pretty bad. But by and large, I think the flight holds up. I think it does. It really works. And there are little things like his legs are kind of in weird positions, or his body isn't quite at the angle that you would expect it to be. But especially the first time when we see it in the Fortress of Solitude, it's just after Clark he's taken 12 years of his life to learn. It's the first time that we see him in the Superman suit, and he's just standing at the back of the Fortress of Solitude, and he just flies forward over and past the camera. Such a good shot. I get goosebumps every time I see that shot. Every single time. I've seen it, like I said, 6 times now. And it's effects from the 1970s, but it still gives me goosebumps. It's just so well done. It's so well done. And I didn't even mention it, but real quick before we go, I do want to mention some of the cinematography here is really, really good. Some of it's amazing. There are a few shots, in particular, when Pa Kent dies of a heart attack and we see Clark run towards him, and we are just at this really wide shot, and I feel like the composition is so amazing. There's such interesting use of negative space, and I love again how far away we are, because it really makes Superman feel isolated, and it makes you feel isolated with him, which as a sentence doesn't make sense, but you feel isolated because you are so far away. You get the sense that Clark feels a little bit like he's alone. He lost his dad, one of the most important people in his whole life. It's really, really interesting. And then there's a scene shortly after that, after the funeral, when Clark decides that he needs to leave Smallville, he needs to go out on his own. There's a scene where the Ma Kent and Clark are standing in a cornfield, wheat field, not corn, and there's an arcing shot with the camera, and there's some wheat. I don't know what the term would be. I don't know. There's wheat in the foreground, and then we've obviously the main focus is on Clark and Ma, and it's a beautiful arcing shot. In the beginning, it's so beautiful. As the scene goes on, I don't necessarily like the fact that the camera it cranes up, and so we sort of go over the heads of Clark and Ma. But the beginning of that scene is so good. There are more that I could talk about, but I'm running just a teensy bit longer than I really wanted to. But final thoughts, guys. If you haven't seen this movie, you can't consider yourself a fan of superhero movies. Again, it's dated, it's from the 70s, but it is so good. It holds up. It is the perfect embodiment of the Silver Age Superman. This is the beginning of it all. Like I said, this is the grandfather of all superhero movies. Of all the movies that you love today. Without Superman 78, there's no way you get Batman 89. There's no way that you get Iron Man. There's no way any of that happens, because this movie was so unique, so interesting, So spectacular. I can't think of another adjective. I don't want to say incredible because that one sounds basic. But in any case, this movie is so good. And really, here's a little bit of wisdom for you. You need to watch the movie. You haven't lived if you haven't watched the movie. Now, all of this information and more I bequeath unto you, my son. I love that line. It's so great. Marlon Brando, man, we didn't even talk about him. He's so funny. He's great in this. You know, it's ironic a little bit that he's great because I know that like he didn't even bother to like learn his lines and stuff. He was just so over it by this point. I love the way that he says Krypton, the planet Krypton instead of Krypton. I don't know. It's so fun. In any case, yeah. So again, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of this movie. Let me know if you think as highly of it as I do, or if you think that I'm stupid because the movie's bad. You'll be wrong, but I'll still read the comments. You'll be wrong, but I'll still read it and enjoy your incorrectness. But in any case, make sure, again, that you subscribe down below, hit the notifications bell so that you never miss another episode. Let's see, what else do we have on the docket? This Thursday, I'll be reviewing the Superman 78 comic series. There's 2 arcs of 6 issues, so there's going to be 12 total issues that I'm going to be talking about, written by Robert Venditti. And then next Tuesday, we're going to be back to talk about Superman Returns. I was originally going to do all of the original Christopher Reeve Superman movies, but then I decided maybe it would be more interesting to to look back at all of the reintroductions to the characters over, for each generation. So we got Superman 78. Next, we're doing Superman Returns. Then after that, we're going to be doing Superman Man of Steel, or rather, it's just Man of Steel. But in any case, stick around for those. I'm really, really excited to be talking about Superman. Again, one of my favorite characters, and it's the perfect time because we're in the summer of Superman. All of this is in preparation for the new movie from the DCU from James Gunn, for which I'm really, really excited. But for the review of that, you're obviously going to have to wait like another almost 2 months. I don't know the exact date. I don't have it pulled up on my calendar here. But in any case, I think we're going to leave it there, and I will see you guys on Thursday to talk more Superman.